Grand Rising. So here we are. And every week, every week, it feels like there's a major stripping away of one way that we're used to seeing our world run to another. Um, Here, at least in America. Certain places in the world that are continuing on the dark trajectory, such as the UK at the moment, they've got a whole lot that they have to deal with. Um, you know, and we're looking more and more so in an unprecedented manner. Like this is the end. This is the end of like naive freedoms, if you will, right? You could have a perpetuity of an agreeable life that was completely selfish um, or charitable unto the selfish. It would not seem that way because you're giving charity to those who have nothing, right? But you give unto the needy, then the needy don't turn it into anything that that serves them other than to serve their indulgence, right? So my point is that we're seeing certain things in consciousness that are coming to an end because like nobody amongst the actual like American people want there to be what we see going on with the ICE situation and the militarization of police situation. And we're talking about militarizing police, but this is but what we're doing right now is using authorities that have been par for the course forever, right? We all know what happened at Waco and shit, right? With this situation, unlike situations like Waco, it's the communication factor. This is why I talked in prior videos about high speech and low speech, right? The people that think that they're not doing anything wrong, but yet are part of a conversation because of them ignoring those that are doing something wrong, are speaking in such a low vocabulary sense. I mean, like, if you want to fucking talk about your freedom, and your freedom has to have a correspondence because there's consequences to behavior to the people around you, and then in the aggregate how that affects everything else around you. If that problem is not changed, then that problem festers as a corruption. What are you doing? Are you turning or no? The problem festers as a corruption. and then it causes all sorts of phenomenon. You know, when we did Brown versus Board of Education, the context of the language is great, but the context of that, the spirit that connected itself to the Supreme Court ruling was insensitive to what it really means to give the true quality of equal merit, right, or true quality of, you know, man, it's the stupid freedom isn't free, semantic, or whatever the fuck you want to call the word. All right, freedom, freedom, I say it all the time, freedom is a responsibility, right? This is why it's like, this is why I made the little tear about the anarchists making their arguments for no government and throwing that into context of when the government is acting against those that transgress. And yes, government should not be the answer. The answer is to not be a harmless fucking person, is the true answer to that fucking question. I see something real quick, yeah. Just make sure. But the problem is that it's not done in consideration for who people are, right? So once the schools became integrated, plenty of people that wanted a better life for minorities, who were living right in the midst of all sorts of shit, it's just like, you throw the good example, you throw here's the one ascribing to be a middle class, like there was the schoolgirl. I think the schoolgirl was the point of the case, right? Something like that, right? And I think the National Guard had to escort her into the fucking classroom, right? And that is like making you assume that everybody is just treating every person that they don't want integrated into their culture the same, right? That, and this is why people are saying, oh, you're targeting me because I'm black. No, you are a black person using your skin as an excuse for your poor behavior and life choices, putting you where the fuck you are because you choose to only accept the epistemological position of the bleak, fatalistic determinism that has been a culture connected to a political core ethos that is very hard to move and very necessary in the body politic, and therefore you got plenty of people willing to exploit you, some of which, because in their eyes your determinism, leaves them no choice because they know what happens when things go where they go, when you get upset, not understanding why the world may not yield to you for some fucking reason. Right? And when it gets to be that big of an issue for a populace, then if a government exists, then a government is the only answer. There isn't sitting across and having a civil discourse with. You can't have a civil discourse when you don't speak Orc, and Orc is insufficient for civil discourse. Right? This is why the Jewish language is a joke if there's only 10,000 fucking words in it. And that only sounds like a lot until you compare it to any other civilizationally functional fucking language. And we're trying to fucking base an entire fucking comprehensive, holistic, world-encapsulating fucking view of humanity and the things humanity lives with in this world and thinks it can perceive beyond this world into an ancestral origin that exists within 10,000 words. Which, because it doesn't and it can't, it becomes culturally appropriated, and thus you see everything having a correspondence to Kabbalistic magic, to tie in Abrahamic religions to everything on behalf of the Goyim Universalists, the various Christians and Muslims, and believe it or not, material atheists, because of another side of the equation. Because there are fundamentalist Jews and then there are radical Jews, like the Essenes being an extreme fundamentalist, and the Zealots. Well, golly gee, we call them Zealots. And God is a zealous God. They put the J in there to obscure the true characteristic nature intended in the original scripture, which is a God of zeal. And even though the Zealots were, but the irony is that the Zealots were very much like kind of a living in sin situation, but they were living in sin to the hypocrisy of, I think they were still doing the sacrifice, like, you know, so they lived in sin, but they made all the sacrifices, right? Right, where like groups that were super conservative, they didn't have to sacrifice so much because they had their sins under control. Oh, just look at this. I got 10 more chickens than you because I didn't have to sacrifice to God for all the pornography. Think about that for a second, right? Probably because people wanted to live in sin. They were spending all their money on their sacrifices and none of it on food. And they weren't being productive, and that's what collapsed the economy because everything was starvation and the society was unsustainable, and it didn't matter how much money and goodwill you threw at it from the parenting Roman Empire. You see the picture being painted there, right? So we're now now we're in a war department, right? We're in a war department. Mars is in a very interesting place. Within a month's time, less than a month's time, Three-Eye Atlas will be on top of Mars. Meaning that if you look to Mars in the night sky right now, with a telescope, you may be able to actually see this thing, right? If you get it at the right angle. So, even though I have to double check, Mars may be on the day side of the sky right now, so it may not matter enough. But Three-Eye Atlas will be closest to Earth on the solstice of all fucking things. So it's a solstice comet. Funny how all this works. You can see how they ramp up the ritual energy for the time of the event. So, anyway, we're announcing a War Department while we're in this Virgo season, while we're in this September season, and like I said, it's September is not the real birth of Jesus Christ, because Jesus Christ is a mythological character who may have been played by a certain chosen Dionysian priest who was part of a secret agenda to work a unified cult for the Roman Empire, to bring everybody into the fold, especially because they were trying to figure out how to bring the Jews into the fold, etc., etc. Which a lot of anti-Semitism comes from a resentment that they couldn't get the Jews on board with this thing, right? And it's not because they were reveling in their pagan thing. They're not pagan. They're something different. Pagans are not people of the book. Pagans are not obsessed with the temple and building cities in the world as part of their religion, right? You're going to build cities, you're going to have civilization. If your religion is not anti-cosmic like the pagans, then life here is fine like that. But also you're not, you might want to go out there and conquer, but a pagan was not converting your religion. You kept your religion. The conquest was coming by a completely different conceptualization of rules of engagement, relationship with the enemy, the nature of your conduct against your enemy, right? So that's, the War Department is a declaration. Let's face it, we're going to be honest with ourselves that we believe we need the preemptive strike option in an ethical and whatever manner. All right, good. Let's just be fucking honest about it, considering the Department of Defense has been a fucking disaster. And not that I have an ability to truly compare us to the Department of War outside of my very low opinion of the War Department in history as well. So, I don't know. I'm not precisely thrilled about it either way. But it's just another thing to add in the list of existential threats to my Dasein. To ask myself, have I protected my informed field to not make it my karma to experience whatever it is the beast of government feels that it needs to do? And because it is fair to say you can't be sure, it's like, going into the future a certain way is like going into the cave of Dagobah a certain way, and you bring with it, you don't need to bring anything in there. There's nothing in there but what you bring. And bringing the weapon was just bringing a symbolism of what? Of fear. Now, is it rational or irrational fear, right? The question is, deep down inside, why does Luke not trust himself? Why does that become a projection of not trusting his master, right? And Yoda's not saying you shouldn't have guns. It's not like he ever said anywhere in the story. But you know, the test of the fucking cave, man. If you know my Wildwood Tarot deck that I use, the Judgment card, the 20 card, you know, is a similar thing. You're passing into a cave for your trial that has, and there's the Bear Guardian at the gate. And so the Bear Guardian takes the form of the Dark Father for Luke to confront his shadow and fail, right? And so all Yoda can hope for is that he can meditate on his failure in the cave, which he brings up later in the story, right? So if we're here, if you find your world is a police state, ask yourself about the steps that you actually took, you know, to truly not be in that, and not because of fear, right? You're not in a police state because you stayed home and you did nothing and you were the non-entity that they want you to be. They put a threat signal out there that's specifically designed. Some of it's to threaten your soul, but a lot of it is not really threatening your soul. It's threatening the demons attached to you. And if you forget that you are not your daemons or your demons, but a demon always wants you to confuse it with yourself. You are going to become the demon's straw man. You're going to step in front to protect it because you don't know the fucking difference, because your identity is deeply enwrapped into your habits, into your modus operandi, your stimuluses and things like that, and wisdom feels like a poison because you know, because if someone like me hits the right rationalization center, deep in your subconscious, even. I don't even think we're talking like this is the subconscious to the unconscious, right? Deep in the subconscious, you're gonna work that out in your head, bypassing the intellect who conspires with the ego to hide the shadow. Which is why the ego has to go through trials of death and rebirth. The ego needs to go through the phoenix process. It's the only part of your soul, I say, that really absolutely has to, because it's the only thing that stops you from growth is your own problems with your sense of self and where you feel yourself to grow, right? It's the same kind of, it's a subtle growth energy that's the same thing as a plant, where, you know, you wake up every day and, you know, it's the plant maybe goes in actuality a half an inch a week, and so it looks like a baby for a fucking month, and then you fucking realize eventually, you turn around, it's like, holy shit, you got huge, right? So time in this respect is quite on our side. But I'm going to deeply encourage you to know deeply encourage you to know what typically when I feel like that's the kind of line to say, usually the stream of consciousness brings the right thing out right then and there. But I seem to not quite have it. But I hope that you got this general idea of the point. I've got to suit up for work. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll catch you later.